What is going on, everyone? Anthony Drew Gary here, host of The How To Show, where we talk about optimizing life, money, and happiness one how to at a time. We are about a week away from the Iowa Democratic primary elections, and while the rest of the country is talking about politics at the national level, I want to break it down a little closer to home and talk about politics at the local level. And so this week on the How To Show, we're going to talk about how to get involved in local politics, and I'm going to have a guest with me in just a second. His name is Josh Huddlestun, and he's been a good friend of mine for a while, and he is involved in local politics in his city. And we'll talk a little bit more about how he got involved, what he's doing, and how you can get involved too if that's something that you're interested in. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Josh. All right, Josh, welcome to the How To Show, my man. How you doing?
Good. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. So talk to me a little bit about your role in local government. You're from Indiana, born and raised, right?
Yes, sir. Well, my story is kind of a different one. It didn't start off very well, I should say. I was a banker here in the town that I live in, and my job was to go out and get accounts from local businesses. And as I went out there to get accounts, everyone kind of unanimously across the board said that they were leaving Hobart. And I couldn't quite understand why. I mean, I like Hobart. I'm born and raised here, so I said there's got to be a reason why. And from that point, it kind of launched me into getting more involved with how things operated within the city. And then from that point, I started to explore paths as far as getting involved. And the councilman came up and kind of took the reins from there and went with it.
Very cool. So what does a councilman do? I know that different cities and different towns call this different roles, but it sounds like at some level below the mayor or the leader of the local government, they're supporting cast. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah, so the council's role, they write basically the law of the city. So what we in Hobart we call them ordinances, and basically what they do is they kind of dictate the direction of the city. So we allocate funds, we set the budget. We're the legislative body of government. So we set the ordinances, we allocate budgets, and then it's up to the mayor, the executive body of the government, to execute what we've laid out. So we're kind of like the Congress of the city. That's kind of our role within a municipality, the city of Hobart.
And so help me bridge the gap between you working as a banker and finding out that it was hard to develop business to you getting involved and thinking that this is something that you might want to do. How did that happen?
Well, I started to ask questions. I started to go around and figure out how I can be involved in I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to help the businesses stay in Hobart. So I went kind of on a long journey of asking a lot of questions and kind of using my centers of influence that I knew, and started to ask them, hey, how can I get involved to help these businesses stay here? How can I kind of take the government red tape down for them, and just a system. I didn't want to be involved to the length that I am now, but I just wanted to help them. And then a wise lady said to me, she said, well, Josh, the easiest thing to do would be to run for council. And she was wrong, but it's not the easiest thing, but definitely would have been the thing that made the most sense to run for city council. But I realized that obviously the elections aren't every year. So in order to get to that point, there were some steps that I had to do prior to that, because it's not like you want to be a city councilman, you just say, hey, I want to be a city councilman, put your name on the ballot. There's every 4 years, there's an election, a municipal election. So I started to brainstorm with some local people, and one of the things that they said to me was get involved in some capacity with the city.
So that we can give some scale and some context to this, let's talk about the size of Hobart, the size of the businesses involved. You're probably not looking at downtown Chicago, downtown Houston. Let's talk about Hobart a little bit so that there's a little scale to what we're talking about.
So surprisingly, Hobart's a small town with about 30,000 people. The businesses were small downtown mom and pop shops, maybe 5 to 10 employees on the far end. Kind of in our downtown corridor, we have a lake, we have a lakefront. We probably have about 3 main streets, probably about 15 to 20 businesses downtown. So that kind of gives you an idea of kind of the landscape of Hobart a little bit. It's not anything that's crazy, like no huge corporations within our downtown. I mean, we have large corporations kind of on the perimeter of our city, but the main focus that I was going after, these businesses were kind of in that downtown area, kind of the heartbeat of the city, if you will.
When you start to get involved at the local level, you got some wise advice. If you want to make changes, that was how to do it. So how did that process look like? Did you start to do any research to find out what it would take to be a councilman? Did you start attending meetings just as a spectator? Did you start to build a team that would help you get where you're wanting to be? What else happened there?
Typically in small towns across Indiana, for sure, you can pretty much pick up the phone, send an email to your elected officials, and they're going to respond to you. They serve you, so they're there to answer your calls, your questions. So I picked up the phone. I basically called the mayor and asked him how I can get involved. Mm-hmm. And at the time, he had a spot on Economic Development Commission board. And he said, with your finance background, he said, we have a position available for you on this board. I would like to put you there. You kind of get your feet wet and see if this is something that you would even enjoy. So they put me on the board, and I learned quickly that government finance is a PhD level class, and it changes every year. So it's interesting.
There you go. But I think that you talked about some actionable items for anyone in really any industry. There is that if you want to figure out if you're interested in something, there's probably a way to volunteer at a smaller scale level just to test the waters there. So I think that that's practical for everyone.
I mean, getting involved on a micro level to running for office as a max level, and all those in between. So for instance, we just had a council meeting tonight. Mm-hmm. The paper will probably record what happened Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So we're voting on changes and things that are happening, and the papers, they're 3 or 4 or 5 days late. So if you're interested in politics, you literally could just go to a council meeting, take a brief summary of what's going on, post it to any of the pages that your hometown has, and then you'd be a living legend. People would literally they just flock to that stuff because it's instant.
That's incredible advice.
I mean, literally, you would just cannibalize the market, because you don't even have to take a stance on any of it. You just write, hey, this ordinance voted 7-0 in favor of whatever. This is what's happening. Brief 2-paragraph, boom, done. Put it on one of those sites, and people would just be like, ah. From just a micro standpoint of being involved on just that kind of small of a level, to volunteering, to just showing up to these meetings. And at the end of every meeting, people ask for, are there any announcements or anyone wishing to come before the board that you're there? And literally you have the opportunity to speak if you feel something's right or wrong, or you have questions with things. You have that, and you have kind of a platform. And so that's pretty much at every public meeting. There's an opportunity for public input.
That open forum concept is probably something that a lot of residents, I would assume, forget about. So that's really good.
Yeah, I think a lot of residents don't go to the meetings. I mean, we probably have. I mean, we're a city of 30,000 people. We probably have the same 5 or 6 people that show up to a meeting, unless something crazy is happening on the council meeting. But for the most part, I would say there's about the 5 to 6 same people that show up every council meeting.
Well, those 5 or 6 people definitely know what's going on, and maybe by way of this how-to show episode, we can get a couple of extra people at some town council meetings.
Right on. A lot of people don't realize within a city government all of the working components of it. So a lot of people think that, hey, if you got to be involved with politics, I need to be an elected official or something on that large, grand of a scale. But there's a lot of boards that really make cities go. That's where the bread and butter is of a city, is kind of those smaller boards that a lot of people are involved in. I mean, that we probably have 50 to 60 people on boards that aren't council members, that they sit on these boards, redevelopment commission, or maybe a planning board, or a board of zoning appeals, or a park board, or something along those lines, that they can be involved in with the city, with the local government. That doesn't necessarily have to be an elected official.
There you go. And that's a great segue into how you can be involved without it being a full-time job. But speaking of that, you being a councilman is not a full-time job either, is it?
It is not a full-time job. Sometimes it's a full-time job, but on paper, it's not a full-time job.
So you work a day job on top of the things that you do for city council.
I do work a day job, and then our city council, we have 2 city council meetings a month, and then we are on about 4 or 5 subcommittees, similar to a Congress. They have subcommittees that they are on. We have subcommittees that we sit on as well. The council kind of breaks down into smaller components. We have 7 members of our council, 2 at large and 5 in a district. So I represent a particular district, and then we have 2 at large, and then those members break down into smaller subcommittees. So we're on those subcommittees, and those meet less frequently than the council members, or depending on what's coming down, any large developments or anything of that nature, then we'll meet more frequently. But on the surface, we pretty much there's 2 councils a month and a lot of interaction with our constituencies.
Sure. And it sounds like those subcommittees are where a lot of the local work probably happens.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of the subcommittees are where kind of the magic happens, I call it. The other boards and the subcommittees is really where the nuts and bolts of any ordinance or any of that nature that kind of they all come together there, and then they kind of go to the larger council for final vote. So that's where the magic really does happen. And a lot of times, you see it on the council meetings are important, but those subcommittee meetings are definitely important as well.
So talk to me a little bit, you obviously represent a constituency as a councilman. How do you best get in touch with what's important to your constituents? How do you represent your people well in a capacity that makes them feel like their voices are heard? What's that look like on a day-to-day basis, knowing that this isn't a full-time job to fully be a councilman, that it's a part-time job, it's a service opportunity that's not meant to take up your whole day?
Well, there's kind of a fine line. I'm here to represent the people, and I hope that everyone that serves an elected position understands that. So I take calls when I can, sometimes during work hours, sometimes after work hours, meet on weekends. Christmas Eve was a busy day for me. We were off, so we were able to get some stuff done in the morning with some constituents because they were off work as well. So basically, I'm available by phone, social media, email. Those things have been a real big contributor to the ease of information from back and forth. And I really think that the social media has changed the landscape of politics, period, but the ease of information is definitely helpful. We can kind of get a good pool of what our constituents want, and they have my personal cell phone number, so they're able to call me or shoot me a text, and we can kind of solve some issues that way as well.
Good. I'm glad you're looking out for the people that you represent. That's good stuff there. So you are in your second term. I believe it just started. We're in January now, right? Talk to me through that. You've got another 4 years ahead of you as councilman. What types of things are you looking to see accomplished? Where's the vision taking you forward? What keeps you excited about doing what you're doing?
What keeps me excited is the constant change. So kind of why I ran for office to begin with, obviously to help those small businesses that were that maybe wanted to leave, but also a lot of people don't realize is the national politics are so polarizing, and people pay a lot of close attention to them, but there's a lot of stuff that gets done on a local level that a lot of people really don't pay attention to. For instance, if your garbage is going to get picked up or not, or the road's going to be plowed, or if you're going to have fire coverage, if your fire department's going to be a volunteer or paid. So the making the impact in someone's everyday life is kind of what keeps me going. Everything that we do has an impact on all of our residents every day. So every decision that we make, it's impactful. These are things that we're voting on that are being talked about that are really impacting every resident that lives in the city of Hobart and some that visit here. So that's kind of what keeps me going, and the constant challenge. Anyone that knows anything about politics knows that everything changes. Legislation changes, and we get changed with different laws and different rules and things that we have to do in the constant change. And kind of the challenge of balancing a budget is kind of one of those things that you think you're on the right track, and then you got to change gears and go the different direction. So it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it, and the challenge keeps me going.
And that's awesome to hear you excited about it. And I agree with you completely. The importance of local government having an impact in someone's day-to-day life is something that we probably take for granted often. And so it's great that we've got people like you who are involved.
It really does take a village, and I don't mean that as like coach talk or any cliche talk. It really does. When you talk about all of the boards that need to be filled and volunteer work, I mean, cities. A lot of people think that cities just have a boatload of cash that they're sitting on, and that's just not the case. So we need a lot of volunteers and people to be involved, and definitely younger people getting involved in local politics. Is definitely something that I hope that we can get done here soon. Is just more people paying attention to local politics. I think the voter turnout in the last municipal election was like 16% of the registered voters. That doesn't count that all of the voters, but
Yeah, that's staggering statistics there for voter turnout at the local level. And again, when these local elections are having impacts on your day-to-day lives, I don't think that we can stress enough the importance of getting involved in the local level, either by being an educated voter, being a volunteer, or just doing something in your community that can make an impact in a positive way. I think you're setting a great example there.
yeah, it's I try to get my kids involved too. We talk. They know who the mayor is. So a lot of people don't even know who their elected officials are on a local level or even how to reach them. So I think it's important that if people start paying attention to local politics, there's an old saying that says all politics start local. And to some degree, they're right. Locally, parties are really not an issue locally. We're not voting on major national issues. We're voting on whether, the road's going to be plowed or this neighborhood's going to get paved or that neighborhood's going to get paved. So locally, we all come together, and I would say that national politics give local politics a bad name, and some of that's probably true. But I think people getting involved with local politics is really something. It's kind of a courageous thing to do. And one of the things that I'll hit on, Anthony, is that you live here and your tax dollars that you pay property taxes on are being spent some way. So it's nice to have some type of input in how that money is being spent. The value of your home depends on it. So a lot of things that investment that you make here locally are dependent on by the elected local officials that either A, you pay attention to, or B, you don't. So I want to be on the side where I'm paying attention to them.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, Josh. So if there's somebody listening that wants to be on that side that's paying attention, you mentioned social media. Maybe that's not something that all elected officials are as involved in as you are. What's a good way to take a first step and to at least understand who your elected official is? Is there a best way to get that information so that anybody can have access to it?
Yeah, right on. So there's every city or town on their website usually has a list of their elected officials and contact phone numbers or emails listed on there. You can always go down to your local city hall, municipal government complex, and kind of find that information out. You can always ask who your elected officials are. On a local level, it's a little different. In the state of Indiana, you can actually go onto the Indiana voters and you can actually type in and see who your state reps are. So you can do from that area. But you can go down to your local government. You can find out who your elected officials are and how to contact them. If they're not on social media, they should be. The landscape of politics is changing drastically. And just trying to be connected to the voters is what I try to achieve, and being readily available is a huge thing for me, and I think it helps translate well with my constituency. And so we're local, so we're not like you're not gonna call us, you get a hold of us, and that's pretty much standard across the board. I'd say for pretty much every local elected official.
Awesome. I think that's fantastic. Josh, I think that'll wrap up this question and answer style phase. But before we end, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to let people know where they can find more about you. You talk about your social media. What's that look like?
Well, I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Facebook. Vote Huddlestun on Facebook, or you can just search Josh Huddlestun. Any of the social media platforms are really a way to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. I'll link in the notes to some of Josh's social pages if you have any questions for him. Thank you for joining me on the How To Show. It has been a pleasure, my man. As always, it's good to talk to you.
Likewise. Take care, Anthony.
All right. Thanks, Josh. All right. Special thanks to Josh for being on the How To Show this week. That was a lot of fun. I think there were a lot of actionable tips from that episode, anywhere from being involved by volunteering to just showing up to meetings. there are opportunities for you to get more out of your local government experience, and if that's something that interests you, go for it. It's a new year, it's a new opportunity for you to grow your mind. Please leave a comment letting me know your thoughts. If you haven't already smashed that like button, you know it's not too late to do it. And be sure to subscribe so that you can be the first to know when I produce new videos. And if you have any ideas for future topics on the How To Show, please leave a comment and let me know. I love reading those. Until next time, this is Anthony Drew Gary, host of the How To Show, signing off.